you dot off thecorner.net. You're watching the Fact Project. And FACT, of course, is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African-Centered Thought. The goal here on the Fact Project is to convey some thoughts and some information to members of our community. We have a guest slated to join us today, Dr. Uhuru Hotep, who is the editor that put together 72 concepts to liberate the African mind. And here we go. He has officially joined us. Hey, Baba Hotep, for joining us.
Good morning, brother. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Yes. How are you today?
I'm just fantastic, brother.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay.
It's always a blessed day when I have the opportunity to speak to our conscious brothers and sisters.
Nice. And
you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I say it's always a good day when you can get up and engage in an active resistance of some sort against the system.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Okay.
That's key to good physical and mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess first of all, what I want to say to start is this. For the month of February, I'm trying to launch a Buy Black campaign here on the Fact Project for the entire month of February and beyond. And so I'm doing this in the backdrop of the system trying to roll back DEI in hiring and so forth. And so I think if we're going to make a statement, we have to exemplify a boycott of some sort against certain businesses in favor of supporting Black-owned business. What are your thoughts on
that? As a general rule, I place all forms of protest politics in a secondary position vis-a-vis direct face-to-face financial, economic, and educational practice. By that I mean, I think we would be just as well served if we have a Buy Black campaign, but the boycott piece should not be the primary goal. It should be an opportunity to demonstrate to the listening audience that we can create our own independent, in this case small, a financial institution, a financial system of exchange. It doesn't have to be limited to use of European currency. We could barter and trade services, actual skill sets that someone may need. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
Sure.
And think always in terms of solutions. We need solutionaries in our community among our young people who are going to think outside the box and come up with actual solutions to our problem. Anything short of that is theory, if it's not going to bring us to a solution. And that's a radical posture. The word radical, like many words in our language, has been criminalized. Most people think to be radical, to think radically, or to act radically is a bad thing, that it's destructive. Not at all. Etymology, I like to look into the roots of words. The word radical comes from the Latin word radic, R-A-D-X, which means root, the foundation, the ultimate basis. So a radical approach means that is one that gets right to the root of the situation, right? We get right down to the actual causality factors, not theory, but to the root. So we need radical approaches. Those are the only kind of approaches I think are ultimately going to be solutions that's going to lead us to solutions to problems that we've been having in our community for, well, since we've been here on these shores. They're intergenerational problems and challenges, but we don't approach them that way. Each generation believes that it's recreates the wheel, rather than putting into practice and try to put a new spin on solutions that have already been formulated for our people and will work if we only put them in practice. So I know that's kind of a around the block response to your question, but I think it sets the stage for the discussion that that we want to have about something I call the Johari Sita, which is Swahili for 6 jewels. Johari is jewel in Kiswahili, and Sita is the number 6. So these I consider to be the 6 jewels of sovereignty. That word sovereignty is an interesting one. At the root of sovereignty, Sovereign, is the word sovereign. And the sovereign is a ruler, a king. To be sovereign, you've got to be a king and have a kingdom. And when we talk about a kingdom, I'm not going deep theoretically. I'm talking about land. In the third dimension, Jesus said his kingdom is not here. Well, I can dig it. I got a problem with that. But the kind of kingdom that we need as flesh and blood entities, human beings, we got to have some control of land. Else we're not sovereign. And if you're not sovereign, you're not free. The only free people in America and on this planet are people who are sovereign. And part of that being sovereign, it operates on a continuum. There's degrees of sovereignty. Are those who own land, who control land, and who have the capacity to make that land productive and produce the Johari Sita, the 6 jewels. But before I get into that, I want to make a distinction. I want to put this in context by contrasting sovereignty with slavery. The late great comedian Paul Mooney, in one of his comedy specials, told a black audience, there's only 2 types of ends in the world, in this country. Either 2 types of black people. Either you running free or you running scared. And then he asked the brothers and sisters, how you running? How you running? To run free means you running sovereign. If you running scared, well, then you're in the condition of slavery. Because there's only 2 options in the human community. Either you're sovereign or either you're a slave. Right? And that slavery thing operates along a continuum. There's degrees of slavery. At one point, we know our history. At one point, we were in physical bondage. The chains were around our bodies. That's not the case now. The chains now, as we know, are around our minds. So it's a different degree of still slavery, but it's a different degree of slavery. It's mental slavery, which prevents us from being a sovereign people, being sovereign individuals, creating sovereign families. So we need to understand that we have a choice. See, Kanye got in a bunch of trouble a few years back because he told black people, hey, man, slavery was a choice. And that's a dangerous position to take because it kind of sounds like you're blaming the victim, right? There's some of that in there, but the victim has to bear some responsibility in his or her slavery, which we chose to be slaves because we didn't run away, because we knew that it would be our butt if we got caught, It won't be pleasant. And we weren't, and we didn't rebel in obvious ways. We had slowdowns on the plantation. Sometimes we even burned the plantation. We didn't work hard. We pretended to be sick and stupid. So we had ways of resisting the institution of slavery, but we didn't have the capacity, the numbers, to break free from both the psychological slavery at that time and certainly the physical slavery. There was no way that we could mount a revolution, an uprising, a successful revolt inside the master's house, inside this nation. Their efforts were made, but they all failed. That slavery piece, since it is a choice, and especially now since it's a mental state, we can choose not to be slaves. We can also make that choice. But to make that choice, you first have to appreciate the fact that you are enslaved. That like it or not, all of us, to some degree or another, have been socialized, miseducated, brainwashed to participate in our own enslavement. When we use their currency to buy this and to buy that, that's evidence that we're locked in. We have no currency of our own that we can use amongst ourselves. Not that it's illegal now to create your own currency. We can do that within the context of the U.S. system. So this slavery piece, again, is the choice, the mental slavery, and the reason we have the problems that we do, and the ongoing conditions that we suffer under is because we don't have mechanisms in place to break enough of our people out of mental slavery where we can make other choices, where we can make concrete steps towards being sovereign. We don't know the difference. We don't appreciate the difference. And that's deliberate. Doesn't mean that Black people are defective. We don't have a leadership. We don't have educational institutions that take it upon their shoulders to educate our people into a sovereign state so that we can move forward along along the continuum toward 100% true sovereignty as a collective. And that means having your own nation, right? Yeah, we got the red, black, and green. We got the flag. We have the lift every voice and sing. We have our national anthem. So we have some of the trappings of a nation state, but we don't have the governmental structures, the economic structures in place to really be a nation. We haven't evolved to that step yet. When we understand that's the ultimate freedom that we can gain here on planet Earth, is to have your own nation and live under your own rules, your own laws, your own leadership. We have been bamboozled into accepting life under another people, those who conquered our ancestors and brought them into slavery. As POWs, our ancestors came here as prisoners of war and were converted into being slaves. So we have that history that we have to understand and reverse. Right now, the masses of us prefer slavery to sovereignty. Because sovereignty is a difficult proposition. We know that the white folks don't want us to be sovereign. To be sovereign means being self-sustaining, self-controlling, self-educating, self-actualizing, self-improving. And the word independent. Right now, we are dependent upon white America for our Johari Cedar. We're dependent upon the larger society, white corporations, for our food, clothing, shelter, our education, our health care, and our self-defense. Those six constitute the Johari Cedar. And they are a mark of a liberated people, of an independent people, of a sovereign people, a self-loving people, where they have organized themselves, their talented 10th, to use Du Bois's term, their educated elite professional class has understood that their role as a educated class, as the leadership class, is to improve the condition of the people. That's it. We need people who Greenleaf, I think the European's name was John Greenleaf, called servant leaders, with emphasis upon the servant. Leaders serve. True leaders are servants. And in the Western Christian tradition, they point to Jesus, Yeshua, as the prime example of a servant leader. And that's exactly what he was. He served his people with his talents, his abilities, his skills, and gave his life for the uplift of his people and so the story goes, all of humanity, but he made it very clear, I'm a Jew, I'm here to serve the Jews. I ain't got a problem with that. I want to see black men and women of that caliber in our community who understand that, hey, I'm talented, I'm gifted, I'm divine, and I'm here to serve our people in our community and move us forward. So that's the kind of leadership that we need. I know I'm rambling here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
And touching on a lot of topics. But the Johari Sita is I consider a radical approach because it gets to the root. Our basic survival needs, food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, and self-defense should be our top priority, restoring those. And all the little marches and boycotts and all that other kind of crap we do, I got no problem with that. But first, get your food and clothing, get your basic survival needs in place. And then we can indulge ourselves, which is really kind of a lot of fantasy. You know, we waste time trying to force white corporations to respect us. And if we don't, we're going to boycott your products. They don't give a crap. They got global markets. You know, they can survive our little boycott because they know 99% of the black folk ain't going to go along with it.
Unfortunately.
So we waste time trying to get masters' attention as opposed to building our own. Let master do what master going to do. Let's build our nation, which means let's get the land that we need. How much land do we need to have under cultivation to feed 45 million African people in this country 3 meals a day? You know, that's the math problems that our young people need to be working out. How much acreage do we need to have in the cultivation to feed ourselves? How many construction companies do we need to build suitable housing? You know, for our people? None of our people should be living outdoors. There should be no homeless black people, nor should there be black people in this country living in substandard housing. That's a leadership problem. Where's our leadership with the skills and the training that we get at these HBCUs to solve those kinds of problems? That's what's intelligent. That's what's going to give us the respect of the white man. He said, damn, these niggas, they're trying to do something for themselves, independent of what I give them. They've come to the realization that you got to own your own. It's about ownership. All the material on wealth building in this country points out what all rich people have in common is they got ownership. They own stuff. And if we don't own stuff, beginning with the land, we've been miseducated. What of those education that we got is not functional for the collective or for our families.
Okay, now we Go ahead.
No, I could go on and on, bro. But I think the listeners out there catch my drift.
I'm pretty sure they get the point. At least we hope they do.
Yes.
Anyway, 72 concepts to liberate the African mind. I found this to be very profound, and it served me in a lot of different ways. Where did the idea to put this book together, where did that come from?
I'm holding it up for the viewing audience. Well, it came out of my appreciation and understanding that words are powerful.
Mm.
If you give folks a new vocabulary, you can elevate their not only their thinking, but their acting. See, we act out of ideas, you know, which often shape to our values. Our values and our ideas is what governs our activity. If you see people acting in a low state, well, the chances are they got a low vocabulary, you know? And just as important, we got to see the concepts acted out. We got to see people actually doing it. We can't talk about unity if we can't point our young people to an example of Black people operating in unity in a positive way that puts money in their pockets, that gives them pride and dignity and independence. They got to see actual working models. We all do of that kind of human activity in practice. If not, it's just a vague kind of idea. It's a kind of a dream kind of concept. You know, it's like a we shall overcome one day,
Yeah.
someday. You know, ain't got no time limit to it, just kind of floating out there. No, we got to build for our young people the kinds of human interactions and communities where we own it of exactly what a free people look like. How do they walk, talk, organize, think, interact with each other? They got to see that. That's how we learn as human beings. You know, we got to see it and we practice it. And where this begins, of course, is in the home where our children have their first role models and teachers.
Mm.
The children are going to do what they see the parents do.
That's right.
If the parents are smoking and drinking and cursing, what do you think the kid's going to do? The same thing. But if the parents have a quiet home, a clean home, where there's opportunities for them to learn and grow because you control the TV and the electronic media.
Mm.
They don't need no more than maybe an hour of that a day. All the other time, they're building something, creating things, drawing something, doing math, working on real world problems. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All of that, we can't expect the white man's school, the public schools to give us that. No, we got to start that in our homes
Sure.
when our children are in utero. You feeling
Sure.
me?
Sure.
When your baby is still is in your belly, in your womb, you need to be playing the conscious music,
Mm.
right? You need to have a quiet, restful home. You should be talking to your child. See, babies can hear their mother's voice in utero. And that's when the education begins.
Mm.
You don't wait till they already get here and you playing catch up.
That's right.
If you work it right, when your child could come here knowing that his alphabet, right? Because he's heard you, mama, say it every day, twice, 3 times a day, A, B, C, D. And we know that when you put some music behind it, some rhythm and rhyme behind it, you got the ideal verbal educational approach and tool.
Yes.
So there's a lot that we could do, to liberate ourselves, to advance ourselves. And if you want to get deep, bro, it really starts before the child even enters the womb. So you can communicate with the spiritual essence of your unborn child while he or she is outside the womb waiting to come in. Now, our wise ancestors knew this and knew how to teach our people how to do this so that we can guide the soul on into the womb. We can determine high quality souls and bring them in. Mary and Joseph were no accident bringing Jesus here. They were both high quality souls, see, who could bring forth a being like Jesus. When you look into the history, the esoteric history, they were both members of a Jewish secret society, if you will, called the Essenes. Essenes. There are books on this. the kind of training that Jesus received prior to coming into Mary's womb, and the kind of training that he received in the Essene community, which was a community of Jewish mystics who dealt with these sciences that we're discussing right now. I know we've gotten far off the topic, but it's all interrelated.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. So you said years ago that Malcolm X had made a statement about language and logic. And you talked about the impact that had on your being able to put this book together. Explain that.
Large part. Malcolm pointed out, which I had never considered, that the language and logic of your oppressor cannot be your language and logic if you're trying to get liberated, which means all the white boys, Harvard concepts and Greek and Roman words and all that crap is suspect. We cannot liberate ourselves using his ideas, his values, his beliefs. It ain't gonna work. So Johari Sita is, I should say the Johari Sita is in the book, but the 72 Concepts to Liberate the African Mind deals with the understanding that language is key to liberation. You give our people a new vocabulary to work with, which are new concepts, new ideas, new principles, which brings a rebirth of culture, ideas, concepts rooted in the best of African thought, that's rooted in the best of our ancestors' wisdom and knowledge, concepts that come out of traditional African, West African, East African cultures, Akan, Yoruba, Hausa, and of course, we all like to and rightfully, explore the treasures of ancient Egypt. One of the master concepts that need to be in our vocabulary, of course, is Ma'at. What our ancient African Nile Valley ancestors understood as a universal law, truth, justice, order, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and propriety. And that's what you build your civilization and culture on. If your society, if your nation is not rooted in truth and justice, harmony and balance, it's not going to survive.
Yeah,
not long term.
Yeah. You talked also about there's another Johari Sita, the one that begins with conceptual incarceration, comfortable captivity, intellectual maroon, Wahemi Musu, Ma'at, and Ma'afa.
Yes, that's another level.
Yeah, that is another level. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a theoretical background and basis.
Okay.
For taking control of our basic survival skills. To do Johari Sita means that we're doing Umoja, that we're doing Kujuchakalia, self-determination. Certainly, Ujima, collective work and responsibility. There's no way that we can take control of our basic survival needs as an individual, a family, a community, and a nation. And we got to hit it on all four of those levels. This Johari Sita piece. That deeper foundation, I very rarely, there's three levels to it. There's three Johari Sitas. The one that I focus on is the concrete one, that basic survival thing. We got to have control. See, some black people know that America is headed into hard times. They've made it clear that there's going to be food shortages, man-made food shortages in the future. There's not going to be enough food to go around here. The white power collective is on a depopulation agenda. Bill Gates is one of the leaders of that. White folks call it eugenics. Narrowing down the human race. There's too many people here. They don't want all of these 8 billion people on the planet. Why? They consume limited resources. And two, they got smart machines. They're creating AI smart machines that can do all the jobs that human beings can do without sick leave, needing days for sick leave or vacation or needing to get paid or having some type of labor strike or whatever, they can eliminate all of that, save billions for themselves. I'm talking about that 1%. I'm talking about the Bill Gates and the Elon Musk and the Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos and the Donald Trumps, people who roll at that level, okay? Those who actually make the decisions and shape what takes place on this planet, or better put, they're the instruments for those who are behind the scenes who shape what takes place on this planet. We
All right,
don't
so,
understand the game they're playing. They're playing depopulation. They want to eliminate black people
and depopulation is
and most white people. They know that they got the technology with their AI, which they're beginning to fear because of its power and the fact that AI have been known to get together amongst themselves, smart machines. Next thing you know, they created their own language and are communicating among themselves in a language that humans don't know.
mm,
It's machine created. And that's when they pull the plug on those bad boys. Because, you know, they're being autonomous. You know,
yep.
they're not under control. But
Yeah, I
the
said,
point I'm trying to make is that hard times are coming, black people. If we want to survive, and continue to thrive at the level that we're thriving at, we're going to have to make some radical changes.
that's true.
We're going to have to step up, understand that the U.S. government is not going to take care of us. If whatever prosperity we enjoy in this country, we're going to have to create it. We can't depend upon them to create jobs for us and our people. In fact, we would have a multi-billion-dollar enterprise if we could just convince black people to do what you're talking about earlier. Buy from ourselves. Keep all that money internal. We don't spend no dollars with white corporations. If there's a black corporation who can give us the same service, even if we have to pay a little bit more, no problem, to keep brother afloat and to preserve that measure of independence, growing independence. But that takes a different vision, a whole different kind of leadership. I'm talking about even in the so-called progressive community than what we have right now. Our so-called progressive leaders are thinking about boycotting and voting, having some type of protest, giving some type of petition to the power structure. No, we should be through with that. That's a waste of time. We build our own. And of course, we understand the game. Whatever black people put together here, they can destroy and take, because they're the major power in this land, not us, no matter how much little sovereignty we can put together, which means that our reach has to be international, both as families and as a collective. We should be owning land in Africa. We should have estates in Ghana. We should have farmland in Ghana and Uganda and Kenya and Senegal and Gambia. Every one of those West African nations, black Americans should own property there. We should be co-creating with our African brothers businesses.
Yeah, no, the great Dr. Maulana Karenga always says that the key crisis among us is the crisis of culture. In the book, you touched on this idea of cultural misorientation as well as deculturalization. What can you tell us about those?
Well, both concepts have to do with our inability to control our own cultural space. So others have stepped in and created a reality where we adopt their culture or aspects of their culture. Every one of the holidays that we have here in Western culture, black people celebrate them and spend big money on those holidays, all of them. Those holidays come out of someone else's culture and enriches the creators of that culture and those holidays, not us. It's not to our advantage to spend the millions of dollars we do every year with white corporations, with white merchants, with white stores, buying Christmas presents to demonstrate our love for our families and our children. That's millions of dollars that are taken out of our pocket and put into our adversary's pocket, all behind a cultural expression that is not ours, that we have been socialized into. It happens on every level. That's how you keep a subjected, exploited population, a subjected, exploited population. You control their culture. You control their taste, their appetites, their values, what they think is cool and hip, what they think is sophisticated and educated. You control all of that. That's why now they have our black professional elite trying to run for generations, running off to Paris and London. Let's go to Madrid, someplace in Europe, because that's supposed to be cool. If you got the money to run over there, you sophisticated.
Right.
You know, they ain't thinking about taking that money and those resources to Africa. You know, that didn't cross their mind because they don't think Africa and themselves, black people, are worthy of that kind of respect and investment. They don't appreciate our culture because they don't know it.
Right.
And they have and wait, roll, bro. You got to study this on your own. There's very few places where you're going to get an in-depth understanding of African and African American history, traditions, and culture. I have BA and MA in African American studies, going back to the 80s, 70s, and it's a field that requires constant study. Because new aspects of our culture and history and tradition is continually being discovered. So it's an ongoing kind of practice in order to, and what that does, and there's research to support this, black kids who are well versed in their culture are stronger intellectually, emotionally, have better behavior, have a sense of vision, have a great sense of self-esteem and self-worth because they know who they are. My favorite African proverb is this one right here, my bro. The beginning of wisdom, just the beginning of wisdom is self-knowledge, is knowing who you are. That's where our educational system should begin. And I'm not talking about just on the cultural, racial, ethnic front. I'm talking about as a divine being, as a living organism. How does this body work? What foods do you need to put into this body to keep it fit and strong and agile and healthy, functioning at its prime? What foods do you not put in your body if you want to maintain your physical health, your longevity, your good looks? That's all part of self-knowledge, knowing who you are. And we don't have that. There's no school nowhere in the black world, to my knowledge, that gives us 360 degrees of self-knowledge. So you can walk out of that institution as someone who knows they're a divine being with unlimited power and capability, connected to the Most High. Ancient times in our ancient temples, yeah, you could go in. Ifit, for example, the world's first institution of higher education. That's IPET, ISET, ISET, I believe, or ISUT, located on the banks of the Inway, NWY, what the Europeans call the Nile River. I think it's on the West Bank. You go in at maybe for higher education. You come at maybe 10, 11, 12. When do you graduate? When you're about 55, 60. You know what I'm saying? But in the white man's little drive time educational system, you can spend 4 years undergrad, then 2 years to get a master, and then maybe 3 to 5 to get a doctorate. So in about 7 years, you can have a doctorate degree. You can be at the pinnacle of the white man's educational system after 7 years. That's a bunch of BS. Our ancestors, again, you came in at 10, 11, 12, and you did not graduate until you were 55 or 60.
Wow.
Yeah. So who do you think had the best educational system that produced men and women of high quality, high ethical, moral and intellectual quality who could design pyramids.
Mm.
You follow what I'm saying? That's the kind
Sure.
of education they got. So we need to understand that we got to educate ourselves. We have to make that commitment to ourselves, to our families. I'm big on the family, bro. The springboard for sovereignty and the Johari Sita begins with the family. Every black family in the U.S. should have sufficient food stockpiled to feed themselves for a year. And you can buy it online. Most of it is a canned and has a 30-year shelf life, which means that you can store that food for 30 years. We know hard times is coming, all right? We can read the writing on the wall. The U.S. is in a bitter struggle with China and Russia for world supremacy. Trump's made that very clear. This is why Trump is talking about taking Greenland.
Mm.
You know that? Have you heard that?
I've
He
heard that.
makes
Sure.
it. Yeah, and he's also talking about annexing Canada and Mexico. They understand that who controls the territory and the resources are going to be the rulers of the 21st century. The Chinese got a big lead because China owns ports and farmland and mineral resources all throughout Africa and in South America. The Chinese so slick they even control the Panama Canal. The Chinese have ports on the Pacific side of the Panama Canal, so they can control the traffic. Trump sees that and his backers, and they say, "Hey, we gotta take the Panama Canal back."
Mm.
And they're not stupid. They know exactly what's going on. They understand if America don't make some gangster moves, the U.S. and its dollar will be at the bottom of the barrel. Your listening audience, if they aren't, they need to study the BRIC nations, BRIC, and the currency that these BRIC nations are putting in place to challenge the American dollar. The only reason that we have the level of the standard of living that we have in this country is because the American military and the American dollar control the world. These nations have been required to trade in American dollars if you want American goods and if you want oil. They used to call it the petrodollar. But the Brazilians, the Russians, the Indians, the Chinese, and I just heard that the Saudis and the Egyptians and the Iranians are all going to join into, and other nations are going to create what is called the BRIC nations, an independent economic system where these brothers and sisters will be trading in their own currencies and in mineral goods,
Mm.
in minerals. They could tell the Russians, "Look, we want X tons of Russian wheat, and we'll give you some tungsten in exchange."
Mm.
Okay, that's how our brothers and sisters are on this planet are rolling. They want to be free from the white man and his dollar and his control. They understand that the Europeans and the Americans have been pimping them for decades, stealing their resources, keeping them in poverty. And rightfully so, they tired of that mess.
Mm.
You know, say, "Hey, no, we're not going to take it anymore, U.S." Now, of course, that got Trump. Uh, he's in the flurry. He's talking about war against these little nations. Who are you to stand up and jeopardize our dollar? Trump has already made it clear that the dollar is not going to fall under his reign, under his administration. They're going to protect that dollar. So with that kind of backdrop, we need to be post haste getting our food together, our clothing. We need to be able to produce our own clothing. Every black home should have a sewing machine, and everybody should know how to make some simple clothes, a top and some pants. You know, something that blew me away that pointed out just recently how foolish these white folk are. 95% of the shoes that are bought and sold in this country are made where? Who would you imagine?
I would imagine China. Or
China.
Yeah.
These Americans don't even produce their own shoes.
Mm.
You know, if China decides that they're gonna play hardball, and they can say to Americans, "Hey, look here, we're gonna triple the price of shoes. You don't make none,
That's right.
right? Hey, bro, these people are so foolish that their military uniforms, really, for the U.S. military, where do you think those uniforms are manufactured?
That's made in China too.
In China.
Wow.
They don't even make their own uniforms to fight a
Mm.
war.
Mm.
So
That doesn't make
they ain't all that slick.
right.
They ain't all that smart. Because no one in their right mind would give away those kind of capabilities to a so-called adversary or any nation. But that's the situation we in. We don't make no shoes. If other people don't make shoes, we ain't got none.
Mm. That's
If
right.
we don't make none, we don't even know we're supposed to make them.
That's right.
Right? We think we're only supposed to buy them. So that
Right.
whole mind shift has to change real quick. Real quick. We need a mass education program amongst our people about the world and how it really functions and what really makes you free and independent. And that's the ownership, making your own goods and services, buying your goods and services made by uh, your own people.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
Now, you talked a while back about the idea of identity and culture, which are very important. You have now a lot of fake experts on the internet promoting pseudo intellectualism, people
yes,
with no credentials
yeah.
that are saying that Black people are not African. How do you respond to that?
Well, yeah, that's a perspective. I don't think we really need to spend time and energy challenging it. I think we need to avoid foolish, wasting time on foolish arguments, uh, foolish debates. Let's wait until we get our basic survival needs in place. Then, if you want to go back and get involved in a bunch of foolishness and fantasy discussions that really mean nothing, and then we can do so.
Okay,
But not now.
got it, got it.
That's like arguing about football teams.
Right.
I know plenty of black males who know all about the football teams, but don't know a damn thing about anything else. Can't carry
Mm,
on any other kind of discussion. And
that's
that's
crazy.
little boy talk. That's
Yeah.
little boy talk. That's what little boys do. Talk about sports. That's a
Right.
game. The real
Right.
game is taking control of your life and your family's life. That's real man game. If you want to be a real man,
Yeah.
play a real game. Take control of your family and its resources and build family legacy and family wealth.
Mm.
And you institute it so it's intergenerational so that your kids and your seed never have to work for anybody else because they got their own. America is one of the very few places in the world where you still can play that game on that level. You can become financially independent here if you get yourself organized, understand what the game is, and get out there and play.
Absolutely. Now, I'm gonna see if I can go another layer deeper. In the book, you talk about the concept of Nyansa Nsada. I'm thinking I'm understanding what that means, but explain that for the audience, if you would. What is Nyansa Nsada?
In Vinyasa Insada, I think it is. Let me look it up, bro.
Okay, we got the great Dr. Uhuru Hotep dropping jewels for us today, touching on some of the 72 concepts to liberate the African mind. And we're going to have him give information on how you can get the book at the end.
Sure.
But
Vinyasa Insada is tree, which means it's the language of the Ashanti people. It's a liberatory, philosophical perspective devised by one of our African-centered scholars, brother named Kofi Ade, that posits that African liberation depends on developing the will and the skills to think and act outside of established Western categories and frameworks, uh, which means having a set of concepts, principles, and ideas that is not composed of the language and based on the logic of our oppressors. It's an attempt to put Malcolm's dictum in perspective and practice. If we're going to be free, we can't be free using the master's language, his logic. his vocabulary, and most important, his values and beliefs. Everything that the enemy collective believes, we should believe just the opposite. Whatever they believe, we believe just the opposite. Whatever they practice, we do a 180-degree turn and practice just its opposite. They practice war, we practice peace. Okay. They
So,
bring hate and confusion, we bring love and balance. We operate out of Ma'at. We operate out of the best of our African traditions, our best of our African culture. And that's Karinga's message. That's where we should be getting our principles from that govern our behavior and our practice in our homes, in our community, in our families. We
yeah,
should be based on the highest African principles.
great. That's great. That's great advice right there. You always talk about our best example is our wisest African ancestors.
That's right.
You also touched on the concept of learned indifference. I think this is interesting, and person with an educational background like yourself, what can you tell us about this concept of learned indifference?
Well, we have been taught to be indifferent to our own history, traditions, and culture. We don't think it's important to know and to practice our own history, traditions, and culture. We're indifferent to it. Now, that's one dimension of it. I would have to look up the term to see other dimensions.
Yeah, but we just learn to be indifferent to the knowledge of ourselves. That comes from, the system that we are currently living in.
Yes, we don't see any practical monetary value in knowing that information.
Right.
We're not going to be celebrated amongst our people for knowing our history, traditions, and culture. Most young black folk, old black folk don't care about that. If you ain't making money from it, if it can't be monetized in a way that we can not only learn from it but earn from it, well then it's we know that ancient Egyptian proverb is 100% accurate. The beginning of wisdom is knowledge itself. But our young people, they don't quite appreciate that. We older people, from my interactions with so many of our elders, don't really appreciate that. Most of the people who in my age bracket, I'm 78, know very little about African people's history, traditions, and culture. They know very little about wealth, intergenerational wealth building. As elders, they have very little to contribute to their families. That's functional, that can move their family forward economically, politically, socially, culturally. We do not have the institutions in our society to train our middle-aged people into wise elderhood. So there is a shortage, an extreme shortage in our families of people in my generation who can speak wisdom to the family and guide them. That's what I'm trying to do with my family as best I can. I'm very blessed because they all are receptive to 99% of what I bring and what I share. And what we're talking about now, we talk about that, but mostly we talk about buying businesses. Okay? Why spend your lifetime trying to create a business, build a business, when you can buy one? You can buy profitable legacy buildings, businesses. A legacy business is a business that has been in business for at least 10, 15 years or more. And there are a lot of these legacy businesses, small businesses, for sale. Why? The boomers are retiring. In many cases, their kids don't want the business. Here, mom and daddy spent their life building a business for you so you can be independent, and they rather do TikTok videos.
Right.
Yeah. So the businesses are available. The challenge is to find them and buy them. And there is a white girl named, no, she's Hispanic. Cody Sanchez. People need to write this down in the listening audience. Cody Sanchez. She's a specialist. She's a multi-millionaire. How did she get rich? Well, she first worked for Fortune 500 companies, and then she started buying businesses, laundromats, yeah, car washes, little plumbing companies. So she has a whole string of small businesses, bedrock businesses, what she calls Main Street businesses as opposed to Wall Street. These are little mom and pop operations. And many of them are easily six-figure and more income producers.
Wow.
Okay, so listen out there in the audience. You want to put your family together and buy a laundromat. Laundromats have very low failure rates.
Mm.
The average laundromat is going to kick out 600,000 a year if it's
Wow.
managed properly. And of course, you don't need no college degree to run a laundromat.
That's true.
Yeah, man. It's about ownership, black people. We need to be owning stuff, buying businesses. I'm not going to say owning stuff. I'm not talking about chains and cars. No, I mean, we need to own businesses. All the businesses in our community should be in the hood, need to be owned by black people.
Most definitely. All right, Baba Hotel, we're at the end of our hour. We're almost out of time. I do want to give you an opportunity to tell people how they can get their hands on this book. I think this is monumental. It has definitely shifted and transformed my thinking for the better, and I'm now using it to teach my own children. How can a person get a copy of that book?
Well, they just need to text me.
Okay.
Easiest way to reach me is to text me.
All right. You want to give that?
412 607 6039. 412 607 6039. The book sells for $10. With postage, it makes it about 12.
Okay.
And just contact me, give me your mailing address, and I'll put a copy in the mail, postal mail, U.S. postal mail, and get it out to you.
Most definitely. So I want everybody to hear that. You want to get this book. It's definitely a good tool to begin to educate your children yourself or educate yourself. But that educational process should begin at home, like you said earlier. And I think this book is a good first step for those people that may not know where to start. They know something should be done, but they don't know where to go. So, for example, a black child can graduate from high school with a diploma. And at that point, they will know everyone else's history and culture and not know their own history and culture.
That's right.
And somehow we call that getting an education. If you want the children to get a real education, I think that should begin with your purchasing a copy of this book, 72 Concepts to Liberate the African Mind. And you also put Adinkra symbols in the book, and you talked about the impact that has on the subconscious mind. Explain that for us, if you would, on our way out.
Well, one of the geniuses of African people, going all the way back to ancient Kemet, which of course is the African country the Greeks called Egypt, is they understood the way to communicate with the subconscious mind is through images, through pictures. Hence the medunetter, which the Greeks called the hieroglyphics. Picture writing. The Adinkra symbol, the Adinkra system, I should say, is a set of maybe 100 symbols created by the Akan people there in Ghana, the Ashanti people, and used for the past several hundred years as a means of communicating symbolically certain principles and proverbs, which are foundational to Akan culture. So one of those would be, of course, the Sankofa, Sankofa. Sankofa is the concept that best way to prepare for the future is spend time in the present, studying the past. One of the symbols for Sankofa is a bird with an egg in its mouth looking over its shoulder. the message conveyed in that symbol, in that image, that egg is knowledge. Okay, the bird is got the egg by looking over its shoulder into its history. And a bird, of course, is going to turn his head around eventually and look forward with knowledge in its mouth. So it's a way of symbolically sending to the people the message that wisdom is being like this bird. You know, you study your past, you study your history, and use that as a tool for preparing in the present, for preparing for your future. So it brings together that past, present, future complex. Because three overlap.
Okay. Baba Hotep, I want to thank you for joining us today. Dropped a lot of jewels as always. And
My pleasure, brother.
yeah, we got to bring you back soon. Last question, is there going to be a follow-up?
A follow-up show?
I know, follow-up to the book, I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Brother, I got a draft of the book.
Okay.
What I have not taken time to do because of other priorities is to complete that draft.
Okay.
But it's on the agenda.
Nice.
72 more
concepts
to liberate the African mind.
Okay. So we look forward to that. We're going to bring you back again before that's done, I'm sure, but we definitely have to bring you back on to talk about that.
Yeah, well, one of the programs that we could do is I could share with the audience maybe 10 or 15 of the concepts in 72 Mo. The additional concepts, ideas, principles, practices that I uncovered since publishing the original 72. Because again, you get the right set of concepts, and our vocabulary needs to be continually evolving as conditions change and as our progress and struggle changes. We're going to need new concepts to build a new future. That's critical, and I'm pleased to make a contribution in that arena.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we'll bring you back on, brother. Until then, we want to thank you again for joining us. I encourage you to stay safe and stay Pan-African, brother.
No doubt. You likewise, brother.
All right, brother.
And I want to say peace and love to your audience.
Okay. And they were in the chat. They were liking what you were saying. So you're getting support on this side.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right.
I want to check it out at some point.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Okay, cool.
All right, brother. All right. Peace.
Peace.